It's 1969, Neil Armstrong lands on the moon. The Woodstock Music Festival takes place, and BMW released the 2002 TII. Today, we're going to look at the 2002 and the TII in more detail. I'm going to tell you why they were so important to BMW. We'll look at this car specifically, take it out for a drive, and I'm going to tell you how it goes. In the early 60s, the newer Classe transformed BMW's fortunes. It was almost bankrupt at that point, and it started to establish its reputation as a maker of sports saloons. BMW soon saw a gap in the market for a smaller two-door version of this car. Together, they went on to become one of the biggest partnerships in automotive history. They evolved into the 3 and 5 series, some of the most evocative cars ever made. In 1966, the 1602 was launched with a 96 horsepower version of the M10 engine from the 1600 saloon. The car was widely praised, but the low power was hampering sales in the US. The twin carb version of the 1600 Ti wasn't homologated. However, the engine from the 2000 CS Coupe was. So indirectly, we have the US to thank for putting the 2-litre engine in this blinding little car. But it wasn't just a bigger engine and more power. There were also chassis revisions to handle that. This particular car started life as a TI, but as you'll see, in terms of specs now, it is basically a TII Plus. So the base 2-litre 2002 produced 99 horsepower. The TI then came out, which was a twin carb version, a hotter version, 115 horsepower. The TII that came later was, I think, one of BMW's first cars, if not the first car, with fuel injection. But crucially, it didn't use the electric Bosch unit, which was quite adaptable. It uses the Kugelfischer mechanical injection, which is a little bit more compromised. That produced 130 horsepower. This car has Gen V throttle bodies, other bits and bobs, bringing it up to 150 horsepower, which is a useful 20 more than the standard TII would have been, and only 20 less than the turbo, which, by the way, I would absolutely love to do a video on. So if any of you have a 2002 turbo, please get in touch with me. These cars are so iconic. I think they look absolutely brilliant. Now, this being a facelifted version, unfortunately, it doesn't have the sort of round rear lights, which I do prefer a little bit. But anyway, in this color, which is a genuine color you could have bought a 202 in, Andy's dad, the owner of this, he had this very car in this color. So what an awesome thing for him to have been able to get one for himself. Yeah, so the look's fantastic. This car, which has a few little tasteful mods, has ATS wheels, which I don't mind. I think maybe there are some others which I would prefer on it potentially, but it does, I think they do look good. Other than that, from the outside, I think it's all pretty much standard. It keeps those beautiful lines as they are. The engine, as I mentioned, is putting out a useful chunk of power more. There's some mods inside as well. We have E30 seats in here. They definitely hold you in place very well. Then, another very useful thing, these cars, the TII, you could get with a 5-speed, but it was a very, very rare option. This one has a 5-speed from an E21. Suspension wise, it is lowered, but I think the struts are from a TII. And obviously the wheels and tyres are wider than standard. Brakes are unassisted, which would probably freak out most normal people, but I'm really looking forward to that because there's nothing quite like that solid pedal to give you the feedback that you need. And the previous builder, so Andy didn't make this car, he built it to be driven, you know, what we was interested in primarily was how it drove. And let's see how it drives. is so smooth for an older engine. I guess the modern injection and throttle bodies and everything might be helping, but that is really nice and it feels nippy. Of course, being an older car and now cars have so much power, it's not going to completely blow you away, but it's quick enough for sure. Does throw you around a little bit. I wouldn't call the suspension stiff, but you can feel what's going on the road. You get so much feel coming in through the wheel. They were unassisted as standard, these, and this just feels so natural. It lightens up really nicely and it communicates in a way that you cannot understand if you've driven a modern car. It's such an addictive feeling. So another couple of little bits and bobs about this car. The interior has a bespoke center console there with an engine start button, some of the instruments. Apart from that, the interior is just so simple, and you realize ergonomics on modern cars and those touch screens, God, why do you need them? This has an indicator on the left, wash wipe on this stalk here on the right, then you have a lights button here. There was what used to be the choke there, which you no longer need, ventilation there, and a cigarette lighter. That is it, and you don't need anything else. It is just perfect. I adore the simplicity of it. We're in a little bit of traffic now, so let's talk about prices, and then I'll drive a little bit harder again on the way back. So if you're looking for one of these, really the more humdrum cars like 1600s and so on, the lower spec cars go for between maybe 7 and 15, depending on what state they're in and what they're doing. If you want a TI, that's a little bit more. TIIs are another chunk ahead. They're 15 to 30,000 really. And as I said, it's interesting because that injection system isn't actually all that good in itself, but there's a huge jump then to the turbos, the car that I really want to do a video on. Those are around the £100,000 mark. Now to drive, it would be interesting to see. I haven't driven one, but I'm told that there really is quite a lot of lag with that turbo system. So I don't know, maybe the TII would be the sweet spot in terms of all-round driving and handling. Okay, let's take it through the gears again and see how it really drives. Very good grip for an older car. The engine does roughen up a little bit at higher revs, but not in an annoying way, just in a way that it knows, it's telling you that it truly is a driver's car, that it's a sporty little thing. That steering is absolutely delicious. I have to confess that I don't actually know what steering system this has, if it's rack and pinion or if it's a worm and roller. Just from feel, it's got an oily kind of slickness to it, a bit like an Alpha 105 series, so to me it almost feels like it's probably worm and roller, I don't know. Either way, it is brilliant. You're so connected to it, like you feel like you are sitting on the front wheels. Now the standard cars, as far as I'm aware, they initially have a little bit of understeer, which can then move into oversteer. This has so much grip, I haven't pushed it past that point, that to me, driving on normal roads, it's almost irrelevant. I find getting into second gear, it's a little bit obstructive, and the gearbox generally, there's a little bit of play in there. I'm not sure if it's linkages or anything of that kind. Driving position is a little bit offset here. The wheel, I don't know if you can see from the cameras, but it's definitely not centered. I'm not sure if that's because these seats move it over slightly, or whether even the standard cars were like that, but oh, this is an absolute joy to thread through these little lanes. Engine is super responsive with this setup. The chassis is brilliant. You can tell that this car was built to be driven hard. Plenty of grip, good chassis control, and yeah, on the downside it's a little bit jittery, but I wouldn't say it's unpleasantly harsh. It's very controlled, let's keep it that way. It corners super flatly. Now, it's a lovely car, this, and a tasteful hot rod, and Andy has it up for sale. So if you are interested, I will put his email address in the video description. I think he has it up for 22,000, which seems like great value for me considering the amount of work that has gone into it. Thank you all so much for watching. It is hugely appreciated. Really look forward to seeing you for the next video.